Now, coming up after this break, we'll talk about shark bites. But first, let's talk about some sharks of the land, some pedophiles, people who think it's perfectly acceptable to prey on young children. And when I think about pedophiles, of course, we know Jimmy Savile and his sex dungeon, many other notable pedophiles as well, Sandusky, many others. And when you think about the destruction of innocence and how these people would love to have their, for lack of a better term, desire, perversion, whatever it may be, classified as an alternative lifestyle. They'd like to say, hey, this is my lifestyle, this is my choice, and if I want to, get into bed with somebody who's underage, that's what they want you to believe is their business. But we all know we don't operate in such a fashion here in the United States of America. We love our children, we protect our children, and we don't want the creepy guy in the trench coat hanging out at the amusement park to prey upon our children. So we say no to this, but they're going to keep pushing this and get you to accept it. And some people liken it to, a fight for marriage equality. Well, it's not the same thing. Preying on somebody's child is not equality, it is pedophilia. And here's a report about that.
As crazy as it sounds, a recent Supreme Court ruling on same-sex marriage may soon allow pedophiles to argue they are suffering discrimination. Using the same tactics used by gay rights activists, pedophiles have begun to seek similar status, arguing their desire for children is a sexual orientation no different than heterosexual or homosexuals, writes Jack Miner for the Northern Colorado Gazette. Miner notes that psychiatrists are now beginning to advocate redefining pedophilia in the same way homosexuality was redefined several years ago. Homosexuality was long considered a mental illness. However, in 1973, the American Psychiatric Association declassified it from a list of mental disorders.
There's no cure for pedophilia, Charlie, because pedophilia isn't a sickness. Let's be absolutely clear.
There's something in the brain of a pedophile that's different from what's in the brain of a non-pedophile. Be able to make a much more direct contact with these people when we indicate to them that we know that they didn't choose this. We know that they really had no opportunity to select what they're going to be attracted to.
More recently, a self-described organization of minor attracted people, B4U Act, held a symposium proposing a new definition of pedophilia in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders of the APA. B4U Act and other pedophile advocacy organizations cite an APA-issued report claiming that the negative potential of adult sex with children was overstated, and that the vast majority of both men and women reported no negative sexual effects from childhood sexual abuse experiences. In 2013, California Congresswoman Representative Jackie Speer, a Democrat, proposed federalizing a state law prohibiting counseling to change a person's sexual orientation. The bill, according to critics, defines pedophilia as a sexual orientation and would afford the same rights granted to homosexuals. This language is so broad and vague, it arguably could include all forms of sexual orientation, including pedophilia, said Brad Dacus, president of the Pacific Justice Institute. It's not just the orientation that is protected, the conduct associated with the orientation is protected as well. In 2014, the New York Times argued in favor of civil rights for pedophiles. Margot Kaplan wrote for the newspaper that around 1% of people sexually attracted to children must hide their disorder from everyone they know or risk losing educational and job opportunities and face the prospect of harassment and even violence. This is essentially the same argument used to mainstream homosexuality.
Representative Paul Stam handed out a 2-page list of definitions of sexual orientation, comparing it to incest and pedophilia.
It was so offensive. I've never really seen anybody make such a blatant ignorant statement and then try to support it with a document.
Brandon, who represents Guilford County, is openly gay and says Stam's comments were painful.
It's hurtful that you would compare me personally to a pedophile.
In point of fact, writes Michael Brown, all the principal arguments commonly used to normalize homosexuality have been used to normalize pedophilia and pederasty. Jerome Corsi, writing for WorldNet Daily, is concerned pedophilia will become the next sexual rights revolution. Corsi points to the normalizing of sexual pathology that occurred following research by Alfred Kinsey and the Kinsey Institute into sexual variations. Corsi cites Judith Reisman in her 2010 book Sexual Sabotage. Our laws are no longer based on Judeo-Christian morality, but on Kinsey's immoral morality. An adulterous, fornicating, aborting, pornography addicted, masturbating, impotent, sadistic, masochistic, bisexual, homosexual, exhibitionist, voyeuristic, and child sexual abusive world, she wrote. These truths are difficult to accept, yet crucial. Americans must come to understand what has gone wrong and how we can change from a family-oriented and flawed but honorable country to a sex-obsessed and violent one.
I'm saying that there are people that were the people that did this to both me and Corey that are still working, they're still out there, and they're some of the richest, most powerful people in this business.
And they are
And they do not want me saying what I'm saying right now.
Are you saying that they're pedophiles?
Yes.
And that they're still in this business?
Yes.
And if Washington doesn't have enough to talk about these days, the Washington Times reported today that unidentified White House aides in the Carter, Reagan, and Bush administrations now are being investigated for using the services of a call boy ring. The paper reports that 2 of the male prostitutes were given a late-night tour of the White House last year.
John Bound for Infowars.com.